Welcome to the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I'm Coach Lisa Callahan, a recovered emotional eater. I ended decades of self-inflicted struggles with food through taking a journey of self-discovery, which revealed the secrets of what was going on underneath the food. Throughout this podcast, we'll explore topics that are rarely talked about, like low self-esteem, lack of confidence, people-pleasing, and decades of self-sabotaging behaviors. Rather than just focusing on the food, we'll dive deeper into aspects of who you are as a person and how you ended up relying on food for comfort to begin with. My mission is simple: to empower women to regain their confidence and prioritize self-love, regardless of the number on the scale. Discover what you've really been craving, and trust me, it's not about the food. This podcast is based on insights shared from the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group on Facebook, so be sure to check out the show notes for the link to the group and a complimentary gift just for you. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Hey, welcome to another fun and insightful episode of the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. The topic today is unlearn these 5 food rules if you want to stop emotional eating. Reboot your mindset. This is part 2 of our 5-part series on how self-discovery is how you can fix emotional eating for good. All right. So, in our last episode, we started to work on the foundational steps that you'll have to take if you want to get out of your old and limiting beliefs, off of the old diet roller coaster and emotional eating track. So, most people think that weight loss is their ultimate goal. And if they could just find the right diet plan and stick to it, then they'd be okay. This is such a false belief because whether you're losing weight or gaining weight, both sides of those stories are riddled in fear and trauma and heartache and, all or nothing. And in that last episode, if you haven't listened, go back and take a peek. We gave you an analogy of putting on brand new shiny windows on a weak and shaky foundation. So, if your beliefs about yourself are the foundation, and if those beliefs are keeping you stuck feeling like you failed over and over again, and every diet you go on is like those new windows, since the foundation, AKA your beliefs about yourself, are a bit shaky, you'll not be able to sustain the pressure coming from these new windows, right? So, like the windows are like the new diets that you go on, but if the foundation's weak, it's like you're putting this pressure on yourself when you're not really strong enough to handle it yet. Which is why when life gets in the way, as it will, those new shiny windows come crashing down, leaving you with more of a mess than you had before, which in this case is usually more weight loss. How many times have you taken off 50 pounds and put back on 60? Like, that's just how it goes. Do that over decades of your life. And I mean, your body is a perfect machine, but at the same time, if your body is not given half the chance, well, what do you expect from it? Like, this body is doing the best it can with what you're giving it. And if you're giving it heapfuls of self-doubt and, regret and, lack of confidence, then I mean, honestly, that's what you're going to get back out of it. So once we start with that new foundation where you now know that you're not going to focus on weight loss, in this episode, I'd like to introduce the thought that both the weight loss and the weight gain are all part of the same exact old and limiting story. And so now that you know that you have to put down that old and limiting story, stop focusing on weight loss, so that way you can grow your confidence muscle, you're going to want to learn how to get off this ride for good, because there's no point in sitting on the old ride, revisiting the same old feelings for the rest of your life. It's time to reboot the system so that you can really find the off switch and get off of the ride once and for all. So, what we're going to start is with agreeing that you got on this weight gain slash weight loss slash dieting ride by accident. It's totally not your fault. At some point in your life, either somebody directed you to get on this ride, like a parent or a caregiver. I have many, many women who I work with who started to get on this ride because a parent thought that they were doing the right thing and took this child to Weight Watchers. Um, a lot of times that is with the best intentions at heart. And yet, if you're in a family of five and you're the only one out of, the other four kids who, gets their hand kind of smacked when you're reaching for the second piece of bread, and it's like, wait, why me? Oh, you're getting a little chubby. And it's like, well, I'm eating the same thing as everybody else is eating, right? So then it becomes where there's something wrong with you. You must have a slow metabolism. You start hearing words that are so sophisticated for a young mind. I know when I was about 14, that's when I started to understand that, like, I was shopping in the husky jeans section at Kmart. I'm like, wait, why am I in that section? And I didn't understand it. And I hadn't been shopping with friends yet until I started to do that, at those young teenage years. And suddenly you're like, oh, I didn't realize that. And so then you start to feel almost embarrassed. Like, did I miss something? Like what just happened? So suddenly the thought of like, oh, I have to lose weight came into my head. Mix that with a bunch of Slim Fast commercials and, teen magazine model type looking girls, and voila. You've got an entire lifelong ride on the diet roller coaster. So for me, I didn't know that I was committing to like a lifelong ride. I had no idea. That just sort of happened by accident. And part of why it happened was because I kept hearing all this new information about the greatest diet. And hey, listen, those are the experts, right? I'm just like a normal person. Like, how do I know what to eat? And suddenly I got really scared because I was like, well, oh my gosh, I've been eating wrong my whole life. I didn't know this. And in fact, because I became a personal fitness trainer at about 19 years old, and I did start to learn about nutrition and, foods and food groups and whatever, I didn't know any of that stuff. I mean, I really grew up on frozen macaroni and cheese and Pop Tarts and cereal and hamburgers and French fries and like pizza, ziti, like Diet Coke. Like that's what I ate. So I had no idea that there was such a thing even as like nutrition. That wasn't for me. Like nutrition was, I don't know, carrots and celery. Like I didn't think that you actually had to eat like that for your life. But once I started to learn about nutrition and that that's supposed to be for your health, I really got scared. I was like, "Oh my gosh, like I've been eating wrong my whole life." And, I started to even blame my mom. I was like, "Were you trying to kill me? Like, why did you feed me this stuff?" And she's like, "I don't know." Like, so you're talking about like levels of sophistication that are just not there. And then mix the specific food rules, you have to eat this, you have to eat that, with a lack of understanding about yourself as a human being because you're so young, you don't even know, or maybe you were just sort of used to being skinny mini until you had your first kid. And then suddenly you're eating, you know, chicken nuggets and all kinds of animal crackers and all kinds of garbage. And suddenly you start packing on weight or you never take off the baby weight. And it's like, that's all new to you. You're like, wait a minute. I never had to think about this before when my parents were cooking for me, like it just didn't dawn on you. So as soon as you like board that ride, it's like click and then you're just woo, round and round. And because you get stuck in a space where you think that the weight loss and the weight gain are like two different things, you just never realize that you're just on the same track no matter what you're going to do unless you get off of the ride. And so when I started to think about like the food rules and the things that I was taught by experts, I mean, what the heck do I know? So I'm trusting the experts, right? They must know more than I do. And because they know more than I do, and I'm not doing that, I must be doing something wrong. Now, mix that in with being like a lifelong people pleaser. And then as an adult woman, becoming more of a perfectionist where I was going to do things right, and I wanted to make sure that I was doing things right. desperate to just, I don't know, just feel good about myself because I was doing the right thing. I mean, diet was the most perfect way for me to be stuck in fear, judgment, failure, disappointment, and not good enough. It was like the perfect recipe to stay stuck and the furthest away from confidence that I could possibly get. But it looked good. It was like, I'm on this diet. Now I'm on that diet. Like it looked good because it looked like I was doing something. But meanwhile, I was going around and around and around in the same roller coaster ride for decades. Yeah, not so good after all. So, since the diets were not sustainable, and I used those diets to shame and blame and feel disappointed in myself. And when I couldn't stay on the diet and I ended up binge eating, I used that to feel disgusted with myself and really just disgusting. Like I just used it to hate myself. And so these feelings were on rinse and repeat because I had so many diet rules imprinted in my head, which meant that I never developed a sense of myself. And I developed a habit of thinking that I didn't know how to take care of myself, that I had to use this external stuff to tell me what I'm supposed to feel about myself, what I'm supposed to do. I gave permission for me not to know myself, not to connect with myself. In fact, all of those diets gave me permission to disconnect with myself and then to use those rules to judge myself and shame myself and blame myself for why, once again, I failed. And since judging and shaming yourself is not going to grow your confidence muscle, you're going to have to stop thinking about the food rules for now so that you can push the stop button and get off of the ride. So, we're going to dive right into these rules, and you're going to have to stop thinking these 5 things immediately. Rule number 1, don't eat after 8 p.m., whatever you do. Suddenly, the diet industry feels like you're like a gremlin. Don't feed it after midnight. And this one is such a classic, but it's so rooted in fear and not facts. It teaches you to be a human doing, like, I will do this every day. Check, check, check. Like you're some sort of a robot. But it doesn't take into consideration A, what type of day you've had. Maybe you've had more activity than a different day. B, where the fluctuation between, I don't know, just daily life comes into place. Like if there's a birthday party or there's a night that you went out later than another night. Like it just assumes that you're going to be like this perfect fit where it's like, oh, 8 p.m. comes and you check off the box. And I do want to admit that before I started my free Facebook community called the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group, and there'll be a link for that in the show notes, that very same community, the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group, used to be called something called Keep It Clean. And if you type into the search bar in the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group, 2015, you will see a very different Coach Lisa. Because back in those days, what I had committed to was that I was going to write a motivational message every single solitary day for 365 days to a group of wonderful women who trusted me as their leader, who actually trusted me to teach them what to do. Meanwhile, I was struggling with binge eating. So, what I was teaching them to do was how to be on restrictive plans. And we used to have a check in, and it was the 8 p.m. check in. And the title of the check in that all of these women followed was called Kitchen Closed, 8 p.m. check in. And so, not only was I like trying to adhere to this myself, but I was convincing others that they had to stay on this strict, rigid plan, which really, really leaves no room for flexibility or self trust. And it also creates judgment and guilt and fear and an all or nothing mentality. Because if you do end up after eating 8 o'clock because you're hungry or because you can't adhere to that rigid plan for that day, you're a big loser, right? You just feel awful about yourself. Like I can only imagine what me as a coach who was like in my perfect little bubble and 8 p.m. kitchen closed did for some of the women who were following me self-esteem. They must have felt awful about themselves. They must have felt like, oh my gosh, she's kitchen closed and I'm starving over here. And then when they're opening the refrigerator at midnight, thinking to themselves, oh my gosh, Coach Lisa would be so disappointed in me. So, really, the last episode that we touched upon this at the end, which said, make certain you know like who you're following. And please know that, like, even when I was in that space 10 years ago, I had my own best interest at heart. I thought I did, but I was building it on a fearful foundation. And so just really watch who you're listening to, who your influencers are. If you have an influencer that you're following that's talking only about food and giving you a bunch of rules and telling you that they can teach you how to have peace with food, and they're focusing on like diet rules and writing things down and journaling and this specific amount of calories or protein or whatever, and they're telling you eat this, do that, stop following them for now. Just give yourself a break, because I can promise you that now that I'm seeing the whole picture, I did not recognize with awareness that I was actually leading people towards having a lack of confidence, not building confidence in themselves and trust. All right. But you can't know what you don't know. So now that I know better, I can do better. And that's why I'm here to help you discover your own truth. Okay. Number two, the second rule that you will have to give up is carbs are bad. Whether it's bread or pasta or fruit, carbs have been demonized in many diet plans. And this rule often leads to restriction and then binging. Plus, then there's the shame and the confusion. And plus, honestly, the information is literally false, period. It's just false. Not only are carbs not bad, they're actually necessary for maintaining brain function. And so it's a smart idea to get rid of the thought that you have to get rid of carbs. It becomes so like controversial. And then you're just like following like everybody who's like, oh, yeah, carbs are bad. But it's just like it's misinformation, and it's really built on marketing, right? When they say like zero net carbs or whatever, but then they have a bunch of like sugar alcohols in the thing that's like messing up your gut. And then there's no consideration of that thought that there's like tons of chemicals in the thing. Like there's just false information. And so if you're buying things that say like low carb, whatever, please just don't do that. I'd rather see you eat something that's like actual healthful and like made of real ingredients than I would to see you eat something that's got 30 ingredients in it but says low carbs on the front. Because that's just going to mess your system up. And it's also going to mess up your mind, because you're going to think that you're doing something bad if you go to like a fresh homemade Italian restaurant and you have a piece of bread on the table. Like that's not bad. So just make certain that you recognize with awareness the marketing that is involved in demonizing carbs. So if you're caught in that marketing message, you have to unlearn that. Like as soon as you see it, just like look the other way. Like if you're going to look into the sun on a solar eclipse and they're like, don't look at it. And you kind of want to look at it, but it's going to like burn your eyeballs out. Do that to yourself. Like when you look at that label that says low carbs, just go like, nope, that's going to like burn a hole in my confidence muscle, and it's going to weaken me. And I don't want to do that anymore. Right. Because remember from episode number 1, your first primary goal is not weight loss. It is confidence building, period. Okay. And if you follow the rules of low carbs, you are going to be strengthening the weakness in your confidence. And I don't want you to do that. So get rid of that idea. Okay. Number 3, you have to get rid of the idea that you must track everything you eat. And if you're like, but Lisa, I have to write everything down. But Lisa, I like to write everything down. But Lisa, I have the prettiest food journal. And Lisa, I have the Fitness Pal app and I haven't missed a day in like over 2 weeks now. And I'm doing so good. I'm on the right track. Just remember, you want to get off of this roller coaster ride. So there is no right track, period. Once you unclip from this roller coaster ride, you will cross the line into uncharted territory, which means that you are going to have to learn how to trust your own intuition, follow your own integrity, do what's best for you, period, end of story. Now, that might mean that you don't like eating bread because it bothers your belly. That's fine, but you don't have to be like, I eat low carbs. Like, it doesn't matter. We don't have to talk about it. Just do what feels best for you. And then just be okay with that. And then know that you don't have to compare yourself or judge yourself or shame yourself, blame yourself or whatever, that there's no rules. You just get to be who you are, a human being, not a human doing. Human doings track everything. And it's like an extra job that you just don't need to be able to sustain your life. Like you're allowed to just trust yourself. Counting calories and counting macros and points becomes a full-time job. And it's all part of the roller coaster. So if you're doing that right now, if you're like, well, tracking my macros and I feel great about myself, never felt better in my entire life, ask yourself why you have to do that. Like, really. And if you stop doing that, what could you be doing instead? Because busyness busyness is a fantastic way how to learn how to stop trusting yourself so that you can weaken your confidence in yourself and strengthen your lack of trust within yourself. So, by all means, if writing everything down gives you a way to stay busy, and that's what you want, just know that there's going to be that flip side of the roller coaster. So, you could be like keeping a journal for like a year already and feel like great about it. But just know that you're still on that click, 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 and it's going to come down. It always will. I've stayed on plans for 4 years where I felt like this is it. I'm doing the right thing, but I had to stay on that strict plan. And that is always going to be the wrong thing, period. So if you want to reboot your mindset, you're going to have to learn how to turn your brain on, which means that you're going to be able to develop trust within yourself, start to trust yourself and stop looking at those numbers, because as long as you're looking at the numbers, you're not going to be able to trust yourself. Now, please know, I know that there are some medical things where people have to weigh in. You have to count your sugars. You have to look at certain things. And please know, this is not in exchange for any medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I know that if your doctor tells you that you have to do something specific, keep doing it. And just know that you are doing the best that you can with the circumstances that you are in at this time. I'm simply talking about more emotional stuff and more fear based thoughts about if I don't track all my points and I don't track all my calories, then I'm going to be out of control. That's it. That's all I'm talking about. So make certain if your doctor's giving you any medical advice, please follow your doctor. Number 4, this is another rule that you're going to have to stop thinking. You're going to have to unlearn this one. You can only lose weight by exercising more. So if we're going to keep aligned with our first goal of building a new foundation relationship with yourself, you're going to want to stop looking at exercise to lose weight. Instead, I'll encourage you to simply start thinking about the confident you. Does the confident you sit on the couch all day with her phone and remote control, or does she get up and move a bit? Since so much of your life has been spent thinking about weight loss being your ultimate goal, movement may have accidentally gotten turned into a punishment instead of just something that you do because you like yourself. So when movement becomes something that you have to do to burn off calories of the things that you've eaten, then it changes your intention and you can quickly flip that exercise routine from being love to being fear. And that's when people tell me a lot. They're like, I just want to get back to where I was on a 4-day-a-week exercise routine. Probably not going to work that way. And I always will tell you to never ask yourself to go back to anything, because that version of you, she was not the highest version of yourself. She was more than likely the fear-based version of yourself, just like I was 10 years ago. I wouldn't want to get back to that girl, even though she had her things written down. She was closing her kitchen at 8. Like, so from an outside surface level, it might have looked like I was doing all the right things and I would always want to get back to her. I don't want to be anywhere near that frame of my life because that frame of my life was very, very fear based. Now, that girl who is in that frame of my life, she's actually matured. So she has learned that what she was doing back then was not actually the right thing. Now she has grown up and she is actually here with me now. So I've got all my information. I know the difference between an apple and a Dorito. I got all my nutrition information. I know that I'm not getting up to eat in the middle of the night. Like those aren't things that I'm doing. I know that I drink my water and such every day. Like all of those things, they're helpful to know. But at the same time, if you're doing them for the wrong reasons and they're on the fear side of the coin, then you're going to do them for the wrong reasons and it will always backfire on you. I struggled with something called exercise bulimia, where I could sometimes find myself on a treadmill at 11 p.m. at night or running at 4 a.m. so that I could burn off something that I'd eaten the day before or so that I could eat something later on when I knew I was going out. And so I admit that I love exercise. I exercise, I move every day, always. I always do. But there was a 10-year span of my life where I was a triathlete and I was an Ironman. I did a lot of exercise. And so I thought I had beat the system in some way because I would reward myself with food and then I would starve myself depending on how much I exercised that day. And there were some weeks that my training schedule required me to spend about 20 hours per week exercising. Now, that's like a part-time job in itself, just so that I could eat. What? That's crazy. But I did it. I mean, you could really hear me saying things like, oh, yeah, I only got 15 miles today running, 15 miles of running. And then I'd allow myself to eat yogurt or whatever. And trust me when I say my frozen yogurt was not like a little thing. It was like one of those gargantuan things that cost me $30 for just the one thing because, I had a whole system where I put the sprinkles in the bottom and the chocolate chips and then a little bit of yogurt and then the Reese's peanut butter cups and then the crushed cookies. And I mean, this thing was mountainous, but I moved, I exercised, I ran 15 miles today. So I could do it. What a waste of time and emotional exhaustion, not to mention so physically damaging. And it's just not fun. It's not sustainable. Like your body will eventually break down, period. End of story. Plus, you're always feeling like you're like up against something, because there's this like all or nothing, right? And then you cannot relax. Like I spent years of my life where I'd exercise all morning, then maybe I'd have a lunch, maybe I'd try and be sitting at the beach and I'd think to myself, no, I should go for a walk. I should go for a swim. I've got to burn those calories off. Like it became really a disorder, right? It's called exercise bulimia. So the last thing on our list is cheat days. I'll never forget when I learned about cheat days. When I was 19 years old, I was training for my first bodybuilding competition and I was so engrossed in my eating habits and I was so terrified of eating anything because like I had these trainers and they were putting me on diets and I mostly ate like boiled chicken and plain rice cakes and protein bars. Like that was it. And honestly, I was pretty miserable. I was like scared. I didn't know, how to do this. I was like, "Oh my gosh, can I do this 7 days a week? It's just crazy." But I did feel in control and my body, showed what it was supposed to show because I was getting my body fat pinched every week and I was drinking gallons of water and. But then somebody told me, "Well, you don't have to stay on that 7 days a week. You can have a cheat day." And I thought, "Oh, wow, a cheat day. That's great." But I realized that that's probably about when the binge eating disorder began. So I figured I was like, wow, I could just get it all in this one day. And so that made my head basically think like I have to get in this one day. And so it made me feel like my, you know, good efforts, where I was like eating, natural foods and whatever, that was like jail. And then the cheat day was like get out of jail. And there was no in between. So that's really what started the binge eating disorder for me was the diet. So, if you want to build a new foundational relationship with yourself and you want to reboot your mindset, you're going to have to unlearn that cheat days are allowed, but only if you've been good because this automatically will create an unhealthy all or nothing mindset where food is either going to be used as a reward or something to repent and it will keep you stuck on the weight loss and diet roller coaster forever. All right, this wraps up the second series of our 5-part series on why self discovery will fix emotional eating. So, the third episode is all going to be on, hang on, I just want to get to my notes actually, is all going to be on discover what you're craving other than food. And this is going to help you to mature those frozen emotions. All right, my friends, until next time, this is the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I want to remind you that, as always, in the show notes, I will have some type of a gift for you in there that you can download. Please join the Women's Emotional Eating Community Support Group if you haven't done that already. And as always, reach out and ask for help. You can send me a DM, send me an email at lisa@coachlisacallahan.com. I would absolutely love to hear from you. You can also find me on social media. And please like and subscribe this episode. Also, share this podcast. All right. I will see you next time. Bye for now. All right, my beautiful friend. That brings us to the end of another episode from the Crush Cravings with Confidence podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening today and took something from our conversation that you are going to put into immediate action. I love spending time with you and would be so grateful if you would share this podcast with at least one friend today who you think might be struggling too. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any other amazing topics. And please, please do leave me a review. It would mean the world to me. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.